There is so much to love about Parasite Eve, from the engaging gameplay and the low playtime for an RPG game from Squaresoft at the time, to the obvious inspiration from films from that era like buddy cop films and body horror from The Thing. Hit all the right spots and make this one of my favorite RPG games to replay. Happy holidays to all you guys, and today we're going to be talking about Parasite Eve. Alright, so I'm going to be bouncing around a bit in this video. I was thinking about it, and after my most recent playthrough of this game, I started to notice something very interesting with the FMVs in this game. And that sent me spiraling down into a rabbit hole. And oh man, I have some very interesting and juicy things to share here. I'll be talking more about the game and such later, but right now, I got some very interesting things to show. Let me give you the rundown where I started in all this situation. Always when I would replay this game, there would be one particular FMV that always strike me as stiff and outdated is the best way to describe it. Not the animation is bad or it looks bad, because it's dated. It's not actually a bad looking scene. In fact, I have quite a thing for old FMVs. There's more FMVs like this. Most of the scenes in the theaters are just like this too. The FMV with Eve, she's pregnant with the ultimate being, Eve on top of the hospital, killing the guys in the planes. So that's quite a bit of the cutscenes in the game. What about the other FMVs? Here's where it gets very interesting now. There are some FMVs that actually still look pretty good. Remember the one cutscene with Aya on the chariot? Just look at her model for a second. Her face not only looks different, but also her expressions are way more expressive. And that got me thinking, are there more cutscenes like this in the game? Or is this just an anomaly? Looking further into this, the cutscene where Daniel jumps out of the helicopter and throws Aya the bullets for the ultimate being, look at Aya. Once again, she looks very good in this cutscene, and her eyes and her facial expressions look very good. Here's another one. Aya, whenever she meets Eve in the piano room and she's playing the piano, and she transforms. Look at that. Her expression's very natural looking. Let's compare this to the sewer scene. Right off the bat, her face is way more expressive in the piano scene. Not convinced yet? Look at her gun. It is literally a different gun. In fact, in the scene where she jumps out of the helicopter, guess what? Her gun is a Beretta, just like all the other good-looking cutscenes. And the more older-looking one, she's holding more of like a P250. I'm not entirely sure what that gun is. I tried to scour the internet to see if I could find anything on this, but I really couldn't. At least no one talking about it. However, doing some digging, I found some very interesting videos on YouTube. Credits to Grant Bittman for these videos. These videos are apparently straight from the Sony archives according to the description. Also, he states that these were probably shown at the E3 1997, looping at Sony's booth. Honestly, I would not be surprised. Let's take a look at the video on the left here. I was not expecting that. Besides the hilarious face Aya makes during that unused part of the FMV, which is very interesting by the way. Notice a lot of these clips from these videos are the exact FMVs I was talking about that don't look quite as good. Also here we have the first trailer they ever released for the game. Dissecting this trailer, besides the things that we've seen already, there's a few more FMVs that I didn't even point out, but there's the FMV I was putting huge emphasis on. So what are exactly the implications of this? With a little bit more digging around on YouTube and finding various other things, we can get a really good idea of how this game was developed exactly, which is very fascinating by the way. To be clear, this is what I can ascertain from the information that I've gathered. This is not with 100% certainty. Rather, it's what I think how the development went. From what I could gather, they had key moments or things they wanted in the game. I'll talk about them when I get to them, but one of the most prominent locations they wanted in the game was the Carnegie Hall. Not only was this location heavily shown off in the trailer they first released, but also in the earliest previews ever for the game, it is shown off in there. I'll show more of this magazine page later, but it seems like they had all the characters conceptualized by this point, including an extremely early pre-render model of Aya that was made by the Final Fantasy VII CGI artist. Which makes sense because the Final Fantasy VII CGI is made by a contracted company, and they probably asked him to make some mock-up models of the characters. Later, all the CGI would be produced in-house. Also, it seems like Soho, the bridge section, were both conceptualized very early into the game's development. As shown by this picture, the Soho section has the T-Rex boss fight, which doesn't happen in the base game, let's just say that. But once again, it does show that they did want the T-Rex very early in the game. Also proven by the trailer where they have the T-Rex fossil turn into a monster. Also, I don't know how accurate the description of the game is, but for some reason, it was originally a virus that was transforming people into creatures? Interesting. Midway through development, most likely had the game's structure in mind and most of the combat completed. The museum was most likely implemented heavily into the game by this point. I can't really give a reading on when Chinatown was integrated, but if I were to guess based off the promotional art that Aya's in Chinatown, it'd probably be midway through development as well. Later on, both the hospital and Central Park sections were made at the same time. Going back to the Squaresoft US tour video, we can clearly see on the artist board that the bridge from the Central Park section is right there, and the one room where you click the button to move the washing machine in order to get to the next room. Though it's a bit different, it's easily recognizable from far away. This probably explains why Central Park and the hospital section use the same tracks. Shortly after, though, in the video, they show off the storyboard, and you can clearly see a squirrel picture on there, which most likely shows that they're starting Chrysler Tower at that time. Or maybe the squirrel was meant for Central Park, who knows? If I were to guess, this is the point in which they were still planning on how the game was going to end. They knew Aya was going to jump out of a boat, but how the ultimate being fight was going to go, and the last Eve fight. Also, one thing before we move on, there's a pretty funny continuity error that the new FMVs caused. Mainly, they wanted Aya to dodge the corpse that's falling on her, but when it goes into game, she's still in the same row as her date. Anyways, moving on. You ever wondered why Parasite Eve's music makes you want to get up and dance while you play the game? Well, there's a very good reason for that. Composer Yoko Shimomura had an extremely hard project with Parasite Eve. The big factors being she was in the United States at the time of composing this soundtrack. Just dealing with that alone is hard. And she wanted opera singing to be the forefront of the track. However, there was some music that she couldn't get it to work with, like the battle music, for example. However, she got inspiration from a, quote, mysterious and weird club that some Hollywood directors brought her to. Happening to overhear the music playing in the club, she's like, okay, I should put this kind of rhythm on top of the opera singing. And man, did that do wonders for the soundtrack. I'd say this is most prevalent on the Statue of Liberty Eve fight. One last silly thing before we move on from the rabbit hole I dug myself into. Shimomura might have watched a certain movie in the 90s. Quick fun little tidbit before we move on in the video. Parasite Eve uses a lot of Hollywood Edge sounds, and it's pretty easy to recognize them. They have funny moments where it's like, oh, it's that sound from that game. Alright, enough of the rabbit hole. I'm going to be talking about the game now. Alright, so I want to jump right into the combat and gameplay mechanics here. Talking about the tool system and combat at the same time really does make sense here. They go hand in hand with each other. While I like the tool system a lot, and it does encourage experimentation with the different types of guns, I think it has a weird problem where you either do not get how the tool system works at all, and you get your ass whooped, or you get how the tool system works, and you can make an absolutely overpowered gun and destroy the game. For example, when I played this game when I was much younger, I used the shotgun with like 5 shots, and it was absolutely dog shit. And I was spending my tools. You get to a point to the game where your loadout starts to scale so badly. And yes, I did have to learn the fights extremely well in order to use my clunky ass shotgun with terrible damage. I think someone that will just play this game once might have an experience where they just absolutely hate the game because they don't understand the tool system at all. On the other hand, though, if you understand the tool system, it is so easy to exploit the fact you can make an insanely overpowered gun very early in the game. I think one thing I don't like, though, is they give you an entirely different gun when you get to Central Park. They just give you this clunky ass AR, and it's way better than every other gun. I think it gives the player the wrong idea in which to use their tools. I think it would have been nice if you could have chose your weapon rather than just given just the M16. Also, tools taking up inventory space and inventory in general is just I hate it so much in this game. Inventory limits in this game have no right being here, in my opinion. Besides the problems of the tool system, I do think that it does provide a lot of replayability in the game, routing out how you want to spend your tools and what type of weapon you want to use. Also, just to put this out here, I've never used the fucking rocket launcher, so this is gonna piss a lot of people off, and especially I've talked about it in my Parasite Eve 2 video. I think the spells are way better in the second game. I think most of the spells are just not very interesting or exciting in this game. It's just a bunch of heal spells and ones to remove your status effects, which is just, you know, when you level up, it's like, oh my god, I got detox. Okay, who cares? Energy shot's pretty neat, and do not get me wrong, Liberate is awesome. Definitely a huge highlight of the spell system, but other than that, everything is just kind of meh. And yes, haste is broken. It's the only spell you use for most of the game. Barrier's good too because the game does pause when you use barrier, so you can use it as iframes if you don't want to get hit by something. Like, those spells are helpful, but they're just not exciting at all. They're just kind of an effect that plays, and then it just gives you a stat boost. If you've never played a Resident Evil game, you won't notice, but oh my god, the loading times in between every door and every screen transition is pretty rough. While I like the story a lot and the presentation of it, I think I have two main gripes with it, however. One isn't really about the story, it's the fact that you just can't skip cutscenes in the game. Like, seriously, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen the first half of the game's FMVs. It's insane. If there's one minor thing I don't really like about the story, is the fact that the whole hallucination thing just kind of falls flat at the very end. Where you hallucinate your dead sister, and it does it all throughout the game, and you're thinking, oh, it's gonna become something big at the end, and no, it doesn't. Until you go on EX mode and find out that, oh, she's really a truebred Eve. But even that isn't true, because that's just a vision that you see in your left eye that's explained at the end of the normal ending. It's just, I don't know, it's just so weird. Either way, it didn't really lead anywhere in the story at all for me. And again, that's not to say I didn't like the story, because I did. I love most of the characters, and they have fantastic dialogue that really do drive the story forward. I love the dynamic between Aya and Daniel. I love Maida too, but oh my god, stop giving me fucking good luck charms. I will punch you in the goddamn face. As for the days of the game, I think most of them are very good. I think the hospital one is probably the weakest one. Not surprising at all, because I think it was made at the very end of development. It just kind of feels like you're going through some random rooms, and then you get to the rooftop and you fight the spider girl. You just go to that one room, and then you just find a pile of exposition dump. It's just like, okay, yeah, anyways. I think one of the best parts of the hospital, though, is looking at the Chrysler Tower through that one screen that you only get when you get to the hospital the first time. And let's not forget Chrysler Tower. Oh my god. What a fucking grind that location is. I hate it so much. But man, the boss is awesome. Yes, a lot of them are reused bosses, but some of the new ones are awesome. I love it. I think what kind of makes up for it is the purebred Eve fight being pretty good, but it's just, oh my god. You literally are spending 10 plus hours walking through empty hallways. It's crazy to me. It's genuinely bad. And an otherwise awesome game. Haven't mentioned yet, but the bosses are fantastic. They're a good difficulty spike to the game when it really needs it at its most, especially near the end of the game where it's just boss after boss after boss after boss, and it's just blood pumping, heart racing action for the majority of the last part of the game. Really though, they knocked it out of the park with the bosses. The centipede boss is fantastic. All the ultimate being stages are just freaking awesome, and thematically the Eve fight at the very end of the game is amazing. Easy boss fight, but thematically amazing. I think one kind of weird problem with some of the bosses, like the Spider Woman at the very top of the hospital, and potentially more bosses halfway through the game, is that there's a certain point where you can just kind of just put on barrier and then just tank all the damage from the bosses, not really playing into the mechanics. I think it becomes much more apparent at the very end of the game when you fight Eve and the Ultimate Being, where you can just barrier up and then take 0 damage. Not to mention auto healing on armor just is stupid and is something else that's just very broken in this game, unfortunately. And of course, for the music, come on. I don't even have to say anything. Soundtrack is just amazing. It's what everyone knows this game for. I know for this last section, it sounds like I just shit on the game and I hate it, but when a game is so good, I just tend to shit on it more than anything. And that shows you how good the game is, when this is all the problems the game have. The rest of it is just awesome. Like, seriously, if you've not played this game, it is amazing. It only takes a day to finish. You play the entire day, not including EX game. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. This video is a little rushed. I'm so sorry. On a bit of a tight schedule this holiday. I can assure you, though, if you want a better video, the Parasite Eve 2 video is so much better than this one. But, you know, it's Parasite Eve 2, so you might hate it. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Happy holidays, and see you guys later.